welcome to this live stream with Fabric February. And today, we are super excited to have you here joining us today. So today is our fantabulous Fabric February sponsor, which is also the foodie sponsor. So I think you guys are, you're one of the key sponsors here. We're talking about the snacks, right?
Yes.
The food for sure. Okay, so before, we're gonna let Just and Henrik take on the show. I'm just gonna have a quick introduction to you guys and remind all of us what Fabric February is, and also give you the latest news. Okay, so Fabric February is still this brand new conference. It's gonna happen in Oslo, 8th of February, and you can buy tickets if you haven't done so yet. They are available on our web page. So if you need any information, just go in there, fabricfebruary.com. And since the last live stream, we have had some quite cool news that I want to show you guys. So we are expanding Fabric February. So it's not only the really amazing 8th of February, the main conference day, where we have some pretty cool speakers joining. You can also join a pre-con workshop. It's going to be February 7th, so the Wednesday before, where Patrick is joining us. So Patrick, the guy from GuideCube, yes, he's sort of famous in the data world. He's coming to Norway, first time ever in Norway, so we're really excited about that. And this will be your perfect opportunity to get the introduction on Fabric. He'll go through everything, really, so that you can get your insight on, okay, what is Fabric? How can I use it? What are the different features, etc. And then the next day, you have the main conference where you can dive into all the topics that you found most interesting and pick and choose. We have a lot of amazing speakers from all over the world. And then we have expanded even more. So it's not only pre-cons, we also have post-cons. Yay. So we're having 3 post-cons. And they are specific for the role that you are inside of, the data world. So we have one postcon specifically for data analysts with Benny, Just, and Asgeir. So yes, it's Just that is in this call, the famous Just, that will be hosting that one. So that will be on Friday. And then we also have one specifically for the data governance world. So if you're into data governance and want to understand how you can set that up in Fabric, Gabby and Anton from Microsoft they're gonna show you how to do that. And then we also have one specifically for the data engineers that's gonna be hosted by Luke, also from Microsoft. So it's really, you start out with the pre-con, then you pick and choose your favorite topics on the main conference day, and then you can dive into the details based on your role and really get all the information that you want on Friday. So it's going to be 3 days. Wow. How cool is that? Pretty awesome. Okay, so last information from me. And make sure that you follow us on LinkedIn, and that's where we post all the information, and also on Twitter. This live stream is also happening on YouTube. You might be joining in from different channels, but make sure to follow our YouTube channel. And I also want to give a hot tip. That is our newsletter. So in the newsletter, we give a monthly update on what's going on. And this is also where you might be getting some discount codes. So all our subscribers on the newsletters, they might receive some additional perks. So if you want to have all the latest news and maybe get some perks, you should sign up for our newsletter. All right. So that was the really short introduction of what Fabric February was. Why are we here again? But it's not really about that today. It's about today. Woo. So our fantabulous sponsor is the best word, fantabulous. I love it. And we have Just and Henrik here joining us. So I'll just hand over the stage to you guys. You're going to show us all the things about how we set up a data lakehouse.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Mate. And I will share my screen, and then we have some slides.
Oh, we already have some nice comments joining us. So Nicola is here.
Yeah, and please come in with your questions on the way, and we can answer them. And we also have some time in the end.
And of course, there's some snacks focus here from Catherine. That's great. Energy here. That's what we need.
So I believe you see this slide now.
I'll put it to stage, and here we are.
Perfect. Yeah, and once again, thank you very much for having us for this presentation, where I will just go through some company slides about Today, because who is Today actually, and then we will go over and present our Lakehouse showcase called Aqua Villa, where is the technical part. So today we create a better tomorrow through technology. We are a kind of new company. We are brought together from a lot of different companies and work with technology, and we wanted to create this better tomorrow, and that's where the Today name come from. And we have presence in pan-Nordic primarily, so in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and Lithuania, and we are quite some employees, 2,400 across these different countries. And personally, I'm sitting in Denmark, in the Aarhus office, and Henrik is in the Copenhagen office here in Denmark also. But we also have a strong presence in Norway. And why our name? It represents partnerships with customers and togetherness. And we will also have drive, presence, availability, and trust in delivering on time. And that's where this Today come from. So we are in digital solutions across many different areas. Digital strategy, digital experiences, software engineering, data and analytics, and that's why we are here today, of course, CRM and business applications, e-government, cloud, and automation, AI, and optimization. So we actually cover very broadly what companies need in digital solutions. But data and analytics, let's just focus on that part. And here we do data management, business intelligence, of course, and data platforms, data integrations, botting and planning, and data visualization and reporting. So we cover the whole stack of data and analytics, and we do that in all the different companies or different countries here. And just a brief introduction to the presenters of the presentation today. My name is Just, and I'm a principal architect. And I've been in this BI space in many years. I am the founder of the Danish Microsoft BI community and also a data platform MVP. And then we have Henrik also joining. Would you present yourself?
Yeah, I can do that very quick. My name is Henrik. I'm primarily a senior developer, but my primary focus is on BI and has been that for the last 10 years or so. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, and for the case we should present today, that's a Lakehouse end-to-end demo, and actually Henrik has been the primary developer of this solution, where I have more like the architect role on it. So what is it that we will like to spend the next 40-50 minutes with you on? Yeah, this is, you see, a classic modern data warehouse, how we have presented it, a data flow. We have the data sources in one end, and then we consume what comes out of this data warehouse in the other end. And then we have these different, maybe new terms, maybe not, ingest, store, prepare, serve, and it is just extract, load, transform, and then load again when we serve the data. This has been how we have been building data warehouse solutions for many years. And we can call it ingest, store, prep, serve. We can call it ELTL, but it's the same process. But when we are talking about a data lakehouse, it actually makes sense to shift it around so that we have it in this way instead, so that we have the prepare and store part separated. because that's kind of one of the keystone in a data lakehouse, that we have a compute and then we have the storage, the one leg in the bottom when we are talking about Fabric. And then of course we have the ingest still, and then also the serve part. So that is this is the solution we will present to you, and how we have made a showcase around this that we call Aqua Villa. It's a showcase we have been presented on different conferences, and now we have the opportunity to show it here for a more broad audience, but also something that we use internally to show to customers how can we build a data lakehouse in Fabric. So this is a showcase that is also what will be part of our framework. So our accelerator, when we go out and build solution with customers, we will do it in this way. So let's take it one step at a time, both with some slides and then of course also with some live demos. And please just shout in if you have any questions, and then Martha or Henrik will stop me because I can see the questions here on my screen.
Yes, we'll shout out.
Perfect. So for the first part, we have the ingest, and we actually have a lot of different options when we ingest data with Fabric. We have the pipelines, that's the one coming from Data Factory. If you have used Data Factory either as a standalone or as part of Synapse, you know it. It's more or less the same. That is the way. That's the part I will show you to you. Then we also have options of using shortcuts to both internal data in Fabric and also to external data from Fabric. And then we also have options to use a Spark notebook to actually call APIs. But common for these are that we will ingest the data as it is from the sources. So if it comes from a database or files or APIs, we will store it as it is. So if it come from an API as a JSON, we will store it as JSON. And then we place it in this landing. We call it zone or lakehouse here as the native file. And we have built, as part of this solution, some meter-driven pipelines so that we can easily onboard new sources from these different types. So if we get a new database, it's just a matter of setting up some metadata and then run the pipeline, and we will have it in the file section of our landing lakehouse. So let me show you that part before we go on and showing you the rest of the architecture. So here we have a workspace. We have, as part of this Aqua Villa showcase, put it in all the parts in one workspace. You can, of course, in a customer scenario, maybe split it up. So you have, for instance, the ingest part in one workspace and the more prepare stuff, serve part in other workspace. But for this showcase, we have it all in one workspace. And we have down here, if I just filter, and for this specific showcase, we only have these three pipelines, and I will go through to two last one here. So we have this concept around parent and child, where we have a parent that's calling the child, and then with some metadata, loop over the child pipeline. So I will go in and show you the parent and then go through the child one afterwards. And I have it here. So it's kind of basic. We look up some metadata, and as part of this, we can go, we have a small SQL database with this metadata in it, where we can go in and say, and in this one, I go and look up in the metadata for the specific connection name called Aqua Villa. What are the tables that I should extract from this one? And then I can reuse actually this pipeline for other connection names also, if they are also SQL based, that this is focused on. So let me just show you what this lookup task is actually getting as a return result. So I will just run it, and then I will get the preview. So in this case, it will show this preview data. So for here, I have 10 tables that I wanted to extract out from this source system, and that is then sent forward to, and for each loop that is then going in and calling this child pipeline. So let's have a look at this child pipeline. So this child pipeline is then called for each of the tables, and it's also starting up with a lookup for the metadata, because we wanted to know which are the columns. If we are not extracting all the columns, we can specify that in the metadata, if it's all columns or only some of the columns. And we also, if this pipeline is prepared to both run in a full load or an incremental load. So if it is set to, you can see down here, we also have some parameters down here. So if it's set to call it as an incremental load, then it will look up the watermark from the last load. And then in the end, as you can see here, it will also set the watermark afterwards if it is set up to incremental load. If it's set up to full load, it will just extract all the rows from that specific table. But that can be different from table to table based on the metadata. So let's just have a look at one of these and see what it is metadata that I get out of it. Now let me take the pool table here. That was a misspell. It was called pools. So just one again. So in here, I just get one row from this specific table called pools, and as you can see, I get some metadata out here around. Is it incremental here? That's false, so not it's a full load. Then what are the key columns? And also it will get a SQL query that it will then send to source to get out this. And that is based on either all columns or maybe some specific column, depending on what is set in this metadata where we store this, so we can do it dynamically. So this is the pattern we use for all our ingesting with Data Factory. Yeah, as I said, if there's a watermark, it will look it up. There's no one here, and then it will just use the copy activity and then get this source query from the metadata, put it in here, and then use it in this specific connection in here. And then in the end, it will, if there is a watermark, it will then put it again. So this is a dynamic way of using pipelines inside of Fabric, and we have done this pattern for many years as part of a normal or ordinary modern data warehouse solutions where we're using just Data Factory. So it's not that much new in the way we are doing things, but we can reuse what we already know and put that part of this Aquavila showcase solution. So I won't run it. We have already, I can actually run it just so you can see, and I will just run it for product, but I don't think we will wait and see. But now it will just do the different steps. It will, of course, with Fabric, go out and find some capacity to do this part, and depending on, and you can see the flow. And then for this one, as I'm only calling the child pipeline, it will just do it for one table. If I've called the parent child line, I have done it for all the tables. So it's pretty simple, and it's very easy for us to go in and onboard a new source system with this flow. And all this data is then landing in a lakehouse called landing, or in this showcase, we actually call it bronze, because there's different naming conventions around this. Should we call it bronze, silver, gold, as Databricks is doing with the medallion architecture, or should we call it what it is, landing raw and cleaned and curated, or anything else we could come up with? But in this showcase, we actually call it bronze, the first layer, and this is landed in the file section over here. So for each source system, we will have a folder. In this case, we only have one source system. It's a really simple showcase, but we can have different folders for different source systems down here. That's automatically created when we make the pipeline. We don't need to create these folders ourselves. And then down in here, we'll get a folder for each of these different entities or tables in this case, when it's a SQL database. And then we have a folder with data. And then if we had incremental load, we will have that in the full. We can actually support in this scenario that we start with a full load and then afterwards doing incremental loads, or maybe have a full load each week or each month, and then we'll have it in different folders in here. And from that, in the next step of our data process, we will take the relevant files depending on when they are loaded. But in this case, I just have a full, and under full, then it's partitioned in this normal Hive partition way of doing it with year, with month, and with day. And as you can see, I just run it now, so I get a one with the today file that I just run, and we place it in Parquet format as is coming from a SQL database. We come from a relational engine, then we put it as a relational format in here. We are not putting it in Delta Lake format yet. We're just putting it in Parquet because then we can also much easier support schema drift in this part. So we wanted to do it as decoupled as we can. So yeah, now if I run it all, I'll have different files in these folders in this bronze lakehouse or landing, as we can also call it. So let me go back to the slides and then go through the next parts of this architecture. So now we have the files in the native format. So now we need to do something with them. We need to prepare them. So for this, we use Spark notebooks. Or we actually use just one Spark notebook. We have made a Spark notebook that is also metadata driven, that can run dynamically to do the preparation, cleaning, and validating of the data. All these boring tasks that no one wanted to do around making the native files ready for our final steps. So all these things that we can actually do dynamically, we can do that. And that is really, really, for me, coming from a SQL background, having now the Spark notebooks and also having a colleague like Henrik that is really, really good in PySpark and in Spark in general, and also has a strong background as a coder, we can do some amazing stuff with Spark notebooks, something that we have tried doing with SQL before and tried doing dynamic SQL to do this. And in many, many cases, if we are used to do it, we had to do it by table or by column. Now we can actually do it by source system. So having one Spark notebook, or maybe even do it by all source systems. So doing this cleaning and validating of the data, putting the right schema on the files, maybe even doing some renaming if we need that from the source systems to this base layer, or we can also call the next layer our silver layer. And here we put it in Delta Lake format. So if you from Microsoft, you call it Delta Parquet, but I think we should call it Delta Lake. Yeah, let me show you that part. Do you have anything?
We have a question. So the question is, do we infer the schema and the copy activity? And that's a good question. But currently we are defining the schema in the ingest meta database. And this is still work in progress, but currently we are depending on the schema which the Parquet files are in the bronze layer. So we currently are a bit dependent on that the ingest write the Parquet files correctly regarding schema.
Yeah. we're taking the schema from the source. So if the schema is in some case changed completely around, we will definitely have some struggle in the next part of the process.
Yeah. So
if something changes from a varchar to an integer or other way around, we need to.
As a last note, I will mention that when going from bronze to silver, we do the schema validation and the constraint validation, and if the schema doesn't match, we will get an error, and getting a hard error or just let it pass through, that's a question of temper. I prefer the hard error, but it depends on the customer as well.
Yeah, we can support both scenarios with this framework, depending on how strict you want to be on the schema. Because if you just put it as, if you don't get an error, you'll probably have a problem later on.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's a good question. I will go in and show you this Spark notebook that we use to get the data from the bronze to silver or landing to base, as we also call it here.
Do that. And while you do that, we'll get just some input from Catherine saying dynamic SQL can be fun or give you nightmares, or both.
Oh, yeah. So here we have created one notebook to get the data from the bronze to silver that we can then pass on with some metadata, so we can do all this decoupling, because one of the steps we also do here is the decoupling. So if we're getting multiple full loads into our files, we won't have the full loads multiple times in our silver layer. We wanted to have it decoupled only one row, and there's of course a lot of different behaviors you can do. Do you want to append? Do you want to do some slowly changing dimension 1 or 2? But that can be also put in with some metadata. For this specific table, we wanted to do it this way. So that is all handled here also, and errors are handled, and we also will be able to do some data quality rules, also control that part. We haven't we are not finished on that part, I can say, around the data quality rules, but that is our ambition to have that also here, so we can validate the data. So for instance, if it's not living up to the schema that we expect, we can say, okay, these rows, we will mark them as, or we can just throw them out. So that's some of the things we do here from bronze to silver. And one of the other things that is really cool around having notebooks is that we can actually put in some documentation around this, and also an image for this part. So we can do a lot of things here, so we can make it easy for our notebook in here, and also describing how to, for instance, update the metadata here. So let's just walk down here. I won't run the different cells, but just tell you, and then you have to, so first off, we import another notebook called Aquavilla Functions. That is actually where all magic is happening. We have a lot of different functions to do all the different read and write behaviors, and do the validation, do the decoupling of this, and how keys are applied and stuff like that. That is all in a separate notebook in here. So that is run at first. Then we will go in and get the connection to the meta database with and the connection is in a Key Vault to extract these, and then we put them in a data frame called metadata in a JSON format, and just so we can see how some of this metadata could look like. I have run this cell. Normally you won't run as part of a flow, but just for you to see. that we can actually for each of the files we can define some dependencies, some behaviors. For instance, here you can see that if we should do in this case with the products file, we do slowly changing dimension 2 in our upsert operation into the bronze into the silver layer, and there we define what are the historical columns, what are the modified data columns, how should we partition it if we need to. If we have really big data volumes, we can partition it in the Delta Lake. We can specify that, and for that we have metadata for each of the files down there, and that is then used in the next step here. That is then looping through all the different files that we have, and then applying all the magic, you can say. And for each of them, it will just do the different steps. For instance, decoupling, and you can see here what are the different write behaviors that we currently have in place: override, renew, append, upsert, slow change dimension 2, slow change then dimension 4, and for the different, as you can see, we have write to delta override, write to delta append. So there are some different functions written to do all these different parts of it that is then passed in some of the metadata that is coming out of the database, and we write it out here. So you can see, so we can get a log, so to say, that, okay, for this specific table or file called results that was placed in this folder, the destination for here, it should be called Aquavilla ERP _resorts. And we can also put that into metadata. So if you wanted to call it something else that is called in the source system, we can do that renaming as part of this. As you can see here, rename is set to false. So in this case, it's an override. In the next case, as you can see down here, it's an upsert. So these different write behaviors can put in, and we currently support a lot of different things we can do as part of this dynamic notebook, and we plan to extend it with more and more functionality over the time. When we start implementing this with the customers, we will of course get the experience back in this solution so that we can reuse it with all our customers. And that is what is done as part of this process. Any questions so far?
Yes, there are a couple more questions. I guess we're going a bit back to the data factory part, but there's a question. So is there any, I'll show it, is there any limit to data volume or processing as compared to Azure Data Factory when you're in Fabric?
It depends on your wallet, because Spark scales to terabytes of data in processing, and storing of the data is Azure Data Lake, so you can also store petabyte of data. And Azure Data Factory is built upon Spark as well, just a little bit more expensive. So yeah, there's a theoretical limit, but not, I doubt that many people are going to hit it.
Good job if you manage to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And then we have one more question. So do you guys also use metadata-driven extract from API data sources?
Yes. We have this ingest framework. I just showed it a little bit in the beginning, and we have incorporated support for APIs as well. But that will be in that part, and we don't pull data directly from notebooks.
No, we have a part of the pipelines we can run from APIs, but depending on the APIs, how difficult they are, there might be some use cases for using Spark notebooks instead. We don't have that built in as part of this solution right now. We actually have a fourth component here for Dynamics Business Central and Dynamics finance and operations, I think, where we use Azure Functions, but that's not a component in Fabric. But we can, of course, also put that in a part of that, and there we have a solution, an ingest solution with the functions, Azure Functions that also can be metadata driven.
All right. And then we also have one more question. So can you quickly explain write to Delta and write to the, as it's slowly changing dimension 2 and write to Delta slowly changing dimension 2. Wait, should it maybe be something else? But it sounds like magic.
That's the question for Henrik, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. It is SCDT or SCD2 as we know it, where we have a column where we get the current and from date and end date. We have built a function which takes, it can actually take any data frame. We can also have more events of the same business key. And then we put it into the function, and then we compare it to what's in the destination table, and then we do the magic around calculating the SCDs. Regarding SCD4, which I guess is the second one, it reminds very much about the SCD2. You have the history table, and I assume people know what SCD2 is here. Sorry if up too fast. But SCD4 is primarily a SCD2 table, which is the history table, and then you take all the currents and put into a different table, which is the current table. So
probably much an edge case scenario.
Yeah, I think in the old day it works better because a CD2 table, because it's a historical table, can get very huge. So if you had a second table with all the currents, then it will fit into memory much better and be faster.
Yeah. Perfect. Let's move on to the next part of this architecture, where we go from base, or we call it silver, to the gold layer or curated layer, and here we apply all the business level transformations, and we actually do it as part of Spark notebooks. But here we have a Spark notebook for each of the destination tables we have. And in this scenario, the output is facts and dimension. It could also be other tables for other purposes, but most commonly you will put it in a star schema as facts and dimensions. So we have one notebook for each facts and dimension, and this is not metadata driven. This is where you actually apply all your business level transformation. This is actually where the hard part is, and this is where the hard part has been for all the years back when we are doing BI solutions, going out and getting the business requirements to build up the dimensional model. And we have chosen in this scenario to actually do it as part of the Spark SQL instead of. You can still also, if you have a lot of competences in PySpark, you can define it. PySpark, it's up to you. You have a notebook for each of them. So it's actually up to the customer or the consultant to write these notebooks. But we are from a consultant company coming with a solid background with SQL, mostly T-SQL, of course, but we use the opportunity here in Spark to actually write it with Spark SQL. So let us have a look at two different notebooks here so going in here, you can see I can just say notebooks only that we have for different dimensions and facts. So for instance, let us take the deep room and have a look at that. And here we again import the Aquavilla functions because we also here need to have the different write behaviors, because we also need maybe to do some upserting and or slow change dimension 2 to the next layer. We define some very basic. Here we don't extract any metadata from the SQL database. Here we have it all contained here. So we say, okay, that what should the dimension be called? What is the destination lakehouse? And then we here have where we do the magic command SQL. So we shift this specific data or this specific frame cell to do it in Spark SQL. And of course, these cells can be, in this case, it's very simple business logic, only just joining some tables and then renaming some columns, but it could be much more complicated. And of course, it could be joined and it could be union, and there could be a lot of different casting and converting and stuff like that, and case for creating new columns. Or maybe actually it could make sense to split it out in different cells and then joining them afterwards for readability. But that's up to the developer of this and how complex the business requirements are to do it. But the main part is we are doing it in Spark SQL, as we can also see down here that this cell is Spark SQL. And then the last cell is just taking this data frame, or excellent data frame. This is made as a temporary view, and put that and use this function called load dimension. And as part of this, we are also creating a surrogate key. We have a naming convention in here around as you can see, room ID is renamed to room key, and based on that, we create the surrogate key, or creating the observed based on this naming convention. So this is how. So we are not defining any surrogate key here. That's handled by the load dimension function. So let me go in and have a look at a fact table. We have. Let us take this reservations one. And here the concept is really the same. Only different is here that the fact type can both be a fact and a bridge. If you have some many-to-many relationships as part of your dimensional model, in this case it is set as the fact. And here again, create a temporary view, and here you can see there's actually a comment in here that we also support role-playing dimensions. Again, around the naming convention in here, you can see here there are built some foreign keys, and based out of these and the naming convention, it actually looks up and the right surrogate keys for this one. We don't need to do any joining out through the dimension in here. It's all handled as part of this load fact function down here, so we can just focus on making the business requirement, making the columns that should be the measures and so on in this. And this is really the magic using a Spark, because Spark is a programming language, so it can handle a lot of this if you are, of course, have the competences to write these functions here. And based on this, we actually have one more. I will just show you to here, and that is we have one central notebook here that is then calling the different notebooks in here, and this is actually an old version. It has been updated in a newer version where we got this MS Spark Util notebook run to have the opportunity to run in parallel. In this case, it's running sequential, but we can also run it parallel, all the dimension tables if we want. And then, of course, running the dimension first, and then running the fact tables, and then loading the bridge tables if we have any of those in here. And we have chosen right now to do it in a notebook, because you can, of course, also have a data factory pipeline that then can for each open. But as of now, if we wanted to be able to use this high concurrency functionality we have in Spark, we need to do it in a notebook. We can't do it in data factory. And also here, it's I think it's also pretty easy to see. We could also have done this metadata driven, so we don't need to put it in, and just we could extract what are the dimensions and then just do it that way. That's also a way, but here you can more easily see it, and this is a showcase, so that's why we have done it that way here. Yeah, so now and then we have our curator layer or a gold layer where we have a fact and dimension, and then it's just around serving the data either through the SQL endpoint that is part of each of these lakehouses to some analysts that have SQL competences. And for them, it doesn't look like a lakehouse. They don't need to know that there's a lakehouse behind this. For them, it's just a SQL database. They can connect with the Management Studio or any other SQL client tool. And then, of course, we have the BI semantic model on top, which could be in direct lake mode. It could also be in import mode, depending on how you want to use it. Or there could be multiple different semantic models on top of that. And of course, it then can be consumed in multiple different ways based on both the SQL endpoint and you can call it the DAX endpoint, the BI semantic model. And then the last part is the orchestrate part. We have a pipeline in Data Factory so that we first call the ingest, and we can call it many ingests from many different source systems, and we can do it in parallel if we want. And then we can call the first Spark notebook and then the next Spark notebook. And just for sake of it, let me show it. And we have it down here. It's called the controller pipeline. So very, very simple pipeline here. And in our case, we only have one source system, but it could be parallel. And in our case, we have a semantic model that is in direct lake mode, so we don't need to have a step where we refresh it. But if you had import mode, you could also add one more step here after the last notebook to refresh one or more data sets. That's also pretty, semantic model, of course. That's pretty easy to make also if needed. And let us just see how it looks. And this is in direct lake mode. The report, this is just a sample report. This is probably one of the reasons why you might not want to use direct lake mode yet, or want to use import mode instead. First time, need to get all the data into the cache, but now it is in the cache. It's very responsive, very quick and easy, even though we are in direct lake mode. Yeah, so with that, we have presented the whole showcase from end to end, and I have a last slide here that is just briefly explaining the different layers in the data lakehouse. You can call it landing, base, curated, or you can call it bronze, silver, gold, or you can call it anything else. But this is kind of the steps and what they are. We are trying to do in the different layers of the architecture. And we have, in our case, one lakehouse for each layer. So that's how we have organized it, and all in one workspace. You could also put it out in separate workspaces if you need to do some more management or governance around it. So do we have any questions here?
Well, we don't have any new questions. Catherine is excited about the pipelines. I agree. So so if you have any questions, this is any last questions, this is the time to put them in. But I think it's cool to see, to see this showcase, because there's so many things you can do in Fabric and everyone is talking about that. But how do you do it? How can you do it end to end with all the opportunities? What should you choose to do? How could you choose to do it? That's really cool to see.
Exactly, and there are so many ways of doing it. Now we have chosen this way as the day way of doing it in Lakehouse in Fabric. We are also actually discussed, because the last layer in the architecture could also be a warehouse. If we have customers that is very, very into doing things in T-SQL, then there's no trouble in doing the same way of doing it. But instead of having a Spark notebook in the last, where we do the business level transformation, we can have stored procedures that is then writing data to a warehouse instead. So that's also a way of doing it, combining both the Spark engine and the SQL engine.
Yeah. Well, now we also have some questions coming in. So that's great. Keep them coming. You have a couple more minutes. Okay, we have one for Asgeir. So question for the orchestration pipeline. I noticed that you are incapable of executing pipelines in other workspaces. How would you work with this?
I didn't get the question. Sorry, there was some
noise. It's the current limits around the pipelines. Regarding every limit, we are looking at using the traditional Azure Data Factory.
It's no secret that for this whole architecture, we have some trouble right now with the maturity of Fabric around the pipelines. Actually, we don't have the opportunity to parameterize connections inside and then actually make it very generic, our pipelines. We don't have DevOps integration in the pipelines, and we don't have the integration runtime or the gateway support yet. So when we go out with this solution today with customers, actually we don't use the pipeline functionality in Fabric because we have some major limits. All of them are on the roadmap for Fabric for Q1, so that will say January, February, March. So hopefully in the start of Q1 and in January or February, we will have the opportunities to use all the functionalities in pipelines, and then we can have it all in Fabric. But for now, if we have some customers that wanted to go into production now or in January, we will advise them to not use the pipeline functionalities in Fabric, but use it as it is in just native Azure Data Factory. And we have got the opportunity from the native Azure Data Factory or Synapse way of doing data pipelines to actually write down to OneLake. So we can write with outside from Data Factory, we can write down to our landing or bronze Lakehouse without any trouble. And we have some generic ingest pipelines for that. So it's pretty easy for us to just say, okay, for the next couple of months, we use the old method. And then when Fabric is ready and mature on the pipeline functionality, we will just migrate it over to Fabric.
All right. And I see Asgeir, he got a follow-up question, so we'll just jump right to that one. So if you were to split up the workspaces for different layers, would you create a separate workspace for holding all the pipelines, or would you designate one of the workspaces to hold all pipelines?
Yeah, probably have both the orchestrating pipelines and the ingest pipelines in one workspace. Yeah.
Can I answer Thomas' questions before Lucas?
Yes. So Thomas, he got a question too. So are you transferring the history to dimensions in curated or only current rows?
Yes, that's a very good question, and it's something we have talked a lot about here. Our end goal of our data platform is to make it deterministic. It means that we can do the same query today, tomorrow, next week, next year, and in 10 years. So the bronze layer for us, and the reason we are not using delta tables, is to keep the data as raw as possible. So we can always rebuild the silver, sorry for using the medallion, but silver and gold from the bronze. So in that way, yes, we are not only, we are transferring the whole history throughout the other layers. And our silver is like what's called consolidation. So in bronze, we have JSON, we have XML, we have Parquet, we have all sorts of formats. And our silver is the cleaned and all delta and all validated data. So it's aligned data in our Silver, if we can put it in that way. So yes, we are transferring the history.
All right, and there's more, so we'll just do as many as we can in the next 5 minutes.
Yes.
That's great. Okay, so Lukash got a question. What do you think is the best way for connecting to on-premise SQL Server database?
Right now, as we don't have the gateway support in Fabric, is to use Data Factory, native pipelines in Data Factory.
And then we'll see what if new things are developed. That's also exciting with a lot of the questions here that, things are new. It's a bit immature, but things are coming. Okay, and that is also part of this question from Jörg. Sorry if I butcher any names. But is the missing maturity true for data flows as well? So I guess we're into the Dataflow Gen 2.
Dataflow Gen 2 actually can use the Power BI gateway to connect to on-premise data sources. So I think the maturity is better for Dataflow Gen 2 than it is from the pipeline functionality.
Yes, I agree. And also, I guess it depends where you're coming from, because the Dataflow Gen 1 didn't do that much, but then the Dataflow Gen 2 does more, which is cool. So if you're coming from the Power BI perspective, Gen 2 will seem pretty mature because you can do more things now.
And also the data flow, I think, is the target audience for that is more the data analyst, and the target audience for data pipelines is more the data engineers.
Yes, agree. All right, I think that's a wrap. Okay, fine. Catherine, she pulled in one more. This is the last question. Are we ready for it? So fast copy in Dataflow Gen 2 is also going to be a game changer. It's more of some input actually. It's not a comment, no, a question.
Yeah. But we can take Lucas around our scripts. We are not ready to share them yet. Also, they are in somewhat beta state, and we also we keep adding function, as you say. We also get more experience as we going out to customers.
And things are changing from day to day almost, so which is cool, but also challenging. Yeah. And also, if you didn't get to see the whole thing and jumped in late, this is available on YouTube as a recording. So just go back and have a look at the scripts there if you want to. Yes. All right. Okay. I think that's what we had time for today. Thank you so much for joining, Just and Henrik. It was great watching your presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity. And last we know, this is actually the we are looking very, very much forward to Fabric February. This is the real community conference, the real Fabric community conference. There's another one in Las Vegas.
Yeah, this
is the real one.
This is the real one. Yes, it's the first one, and community driven. So that's cool. Yes, make sure to go and say hello to Today and their stand, and also let them know since they're a foodie sponsor, if the snacks was living up to the expectations. Yes.
Yeah, and of course we also like to take questions when we are at the conference. Just come find me and Henrik or some of our colleagues.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for joining this live stream, and then we'll see you at the next one, and also see you in February. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.